when we say ideas rule the world, they are not the ones you keep to yourself and you keep within just your circle. They are the ones you share with the rest of the universe. And those are the ones that shape the next generation of thinking for the entire mankind. That's how I want to say good morning and welcome to Early Exchange today on Souq News, transmitting live from Broad Street, Lagos, Nigeria, the commercial nerve center of this country called Nigeria. My name is Ayo Jimmy, and I have beside me Ola Oluwawe. Good morning, Ola.
Yes, good morning, Ayo Jimmy. And I just really want to say that today is an opportunity to keep things positive. The more positive you are, the more results you get. Welcome to the show once again. Let's get to Blessing H, who is standing by for the news. Good morning, Blessing.
Good morning, Ola. And good morning, Ayo. Thank you for joining me on the morning news updates on Early Exchange. I am Blessing H. Now from unexpected twist to Good morning. Thank you for joining me on the morning news update on Early Exchange. I am Blessing AG. Now, from unexpected twist in African skies to renewable energy breakthroughs, today's morning news update takes us on a journey through Morocco and Saudi Arabia's ambitions while catching a glimpse of Barbie emergence in the United Arab Emirates. Stay tuned for these captivating stories and more. Thanks for staying. Now, the Nigerian government has announced the allocation of 15 billion naira to finance the Safe Schools initiative in 2023. This announcement was made in a joint statement released by the Ministry of Information and the Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning, following a press briefing held in Abuja by Halima Iliya Ibrahim, the national coordinator of the Safe Schools initiative. The primary objective of the initiative is to ensure that children affected by conflict and insecurity can continue their education without disruption. According to Halima, the strategy will cover 50% of the highest risk public schools during the medium-term period of 2023 to 2026. Similarly, a technical committee or technical working group comprising agencies such as the Ministry of Education, Nigeria Governors Forum, Nigeria Police Force, Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps, Department of State Security Civil Service, DSS, and Defense Headquarters was tasked with devising a comprehensive national plan for financing safe schools. Away from that, a recent policy change in the civil aviation regulations in Nigeria now requires startup and existing airlines to have a minimum of 6 aircraft, leading to the possibility of local carriers entering partnerships, mergers and acquisitions to meet this requirement and remain in the market. The shift follows concerns about regular flight delays, cancellations and shutdowns due to aircraft shortages. The Director General of the Nigeria Civil Aviation Authority (NCAA), Musa Nuhu, had recently made the announcement during a virtual meeting with aviation correspondents, revealing that the major problems facing the domestic airline operation is due to lack of capacity to overcome challenges. The Director General said the new policy is not only for new startups, but also for existing operators, adding that existing operators have been given a deadline to comply with the policy. While international regulations by the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, does not specify a minimum aircraft requirement, the Nigeria Civil Aviation Authority (NCA) introduced this rule to ensure the viability and stability of airlines. The question is if these new regulations will encourage airlines to strategize and collaborate in order to build stronger airlines to address ongoing challenges in the sector? Now, that's a question that time will answer. The Nigerian Ports Authority (NPA) says it has seen positive outcomes from its effort to address export challenges, with a total of 3.5 million metric tons of export trade facilitated through the nation's seaports in the first half of this year. The managing director of NPA, Mohammed Bello Koko, says the growth in export volume over the past years reached over 5.1 million metric tons in 2022 as a product of collaboration with other government agencies such as Customs, Nigerian Shippers Council, and Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency to expedite the clearance of imports and exports. Bello Koko noted the importance of efficient custom processes, the creation of export processing terminals, time belts for export, and improved traffic enforcement to reduce congestion and enhance export growth. The positive results have contributed to Nigeria's increased non-oil export performance, with the Nigerian Export Promotion Council (NEPC) reporting a $4.8 billion export figure for 2022, the highest since NEPC's establishment. The Nigeria Customs Service (NCS) has enforced the presidential directive to temporarily close Nigeria-Niger border in response to the recent political changes in the Niger Republic. The Acting Controller General of Customs (CGC) Adewale Adeniyi noted that the closure aims to ensure peace and security in the region, safeguarding Nigeria's democracy and social stability and amid the uncertain situation in Niger. The CGC acknowledged the potential impact on customs revenue generation, but assured that proactive strategies are in place to address it. He conveyed the government's commitment to citizens' well-being and businesses, with optimism that the border closure is temporary and aimed at fostering peace for continued thriving businesses. Moving now to another story, European airlines are facing disruptions and flight suspensions across Africa as Niger's junta closes its airspace. The junta ignored a deadline from the West African regional bloc and faces potential military intervention. This adds to existing challenges in African airspace, with some flights taking detours of up to 1,000 kilometers. Air France suspended flights to Burkina Faso and Mali, while other airlines may need alternative routes. Aviation analysts suggest the impact may be limited due to the relatively small number of air connections in Africa. Longer flight times are anticipated, and British Airways apologized for disruptions. Meanwhile, the Economic Community of West African States (ECOWAS) has increased its financial sanctions against the Niger junta and its supporters, which includes the governments of Mali and Burkina Faso. This decision follows a diplomatic effort involving the African Union, ECOWAS, United Nations, and United States to resolve the political crisis. European Union countries have also started laying the groundwork to impose the first sanctions on members of the junta. We continue after this break. Stay tuned. Many thanks for staying tuned. Continue now with the money news update on early exchange. Morocco's renewable energy agency, MASEN, has initiated a pre-qualification tender for the third phase of solar power project in the Atlas Mountains. Developers are invited to submit pre-qualification documents by October 20th to finance, construct and operate the 400 megawatt Noor Mediat 3 using photovoltaic technology. The first phase of the project, Noor Mediat 1, was awarded to a consortium led by EDF Renewables in 2019, but completion has been delayed due to disputes over concentrated solar power CSP technology. MASEN had previously pre-qualified 6 consortiums for the second phase. Noor Mediat 2, which is a PV plant with 2-hour storage capes to 52% by 2030, with renewables already accounting for 40% of capacity. Morocco aims to raise its installed power capacity from renewable energy. And now to another story. The highly anticipated Barbie movie is set to debut in United Arab Emirates UAE cinemas today, August 10. But the film has received a 15+ rating in the country, in contrast to its global PG-13 rating. This means that children under the age of 15 will not be allowed to attend screenings of the movie. The decision has garnered mixed reactions from parents and moviegoers. Some parents understand the rating as they agree that the themes addressed in the film may not be suitable for younger audiences, while others express disappointment as their children were looking forward to watching the film. The film, directed by Greta Gerwig and starring Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling, explores Barbie's existential crisis as she navigates a seemingly perfect world. Despite the age restriction, many residents have already booked tickets for the early screenings, reflecting the movie's high anticipation. And from the movie world, we get into finance again. The World Bank has stopped new loans to Uganda due to concerns surrounding a recently enacted anti-gay law. While same-sex relationships were already illegal in Uganda, the new legislation, which came into effect in May, imposes even harsher penalties, including life imprisonment and death penalty in some cases. Immediately after the law was enacted in May, a World Bank team traveled to Uganda immediately after the law was enacted and determined that additional measures were needed to ensure projects were being implemented in line with the World Bank's environmental and social standards. In response to these developments, the country's ambassador to the United Nations, Adonia Ayubaru, expressed concerns through a tweet urging a reconsideration of the World Bank's approach and decision-making processes. To the Middle East now, Saudi Arabia is partnering with a Dutch company, Van de Hoven, to create a synthetic climate for green crops in areas where planting was difficult. The plan is to build a large garden near the futuristic city of Neom, a part of a $500 billion project by Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince to create a high-tech city in the northwest region of the country. The city aims to redefine how food is produced, distributed, and consumed. To achieve this, Saudi Arabia is investing in a horticulture oasis roughly the size of 15 soccer fields. This is a significant move for a country that heavily relies on food imports due to its arid land and extreme temperatures. Van Hoven, under a $120 million contract where the Saudi government will construct special facilities to simulate a climate suitable for green crops. The goal is to find more efficient ways of producing food, especially in water-scarce environments. Moving now to Europe, Italy has passed a 40% tax on the profits that banks earn from the surge in interest rates, causing a significant decline in share prices. The government's decision to impose this tax comes as Italian banks have reported profits due to an increase in official interest rates, and the proceeds from this tax will be directed towards assisting mortgage holders and reducing taxes for citizens. The Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni's cabinet ministers agreed on this move during a late-night cabinet meeting, stressing their commitments to utilizing the generated funds to provide support to households and businesses grappling with borrowing costs. The Deputy Prime Minister, Matteo Salvini, also emphasized the significance of this decision, stating that the substantial profits of the banking sector underscores the need for this taxation. Reports indicate that approximately $2 billion could be raised through the introduced tax, and the Italian Parliament have a 60-day period to enact the legislation. China has announced that it will lift tariffs on Australian barley imports, ending a 3-year trade dispute that affected billions of dollars in trade. Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, who welcomed the move, also revealed that Canberra will suspend its case at the World Trade Organization (WTO) over China's barley duties. This development signifies a warmer relationship between the two nations, as Australia recently invited China's new foreign minister to visit. The tariffs drop on Australian barley started on Saturday, with China's Commerce Ministry citing changes in the barley market as the reason. The move follows China's imposition of tariffs on various Australian exports in 2020, including barley, beef and wine, as well as unofficial restrictions on other products. Australia is now urging China to also drop tariffs on its wine exports, which remain a subject of a separate WTO complaint. Still in China, China's economy has slipped into deflation as consumer prices experienced a decline in July, marking the first drop in over 2 years. The official consumer price index, a measure of inflation, decreased by 0.3% from the previous year. This deflationary trend puts pressure on the Chinese government to stimulate demand in the world's second-largest economy. Weak import and export data, challenges in the housing market, increasing local government debt, and high youth unemployment also contribute to the economic concerns. The potential for deflation poses risks such as reduced consumer spending, lower company profits, and decreased global demand for Chinese goods. Experts suggest that a combination of increased government spending, lower taxes, and looser monetary policy could help address these challenges and promote economic recovery. Now to the UK, where 6 largest water companies, including Severn Trent, are facing legal action over allegations of pollution, underreporting, and consumer overcharging. Claims against the other companies are expected soon, and if successful, around 20 million customers could be eligible for compensation. The legal action is being brought on an opt-out basis, with a competition appeal tribunal deciding whether the claims can proceed, potentially taking about a year. However, industry representatives have dismissed the claims as speculative and without merit, emphasizing existing compliance with legal requirements and environmental regulations. And we get to the U.S., where rapper Tory Lanez has been sentenced to 10 years in prison for shooting and injuring hip-hop artist Megan Thee Stallion in the feet. The case, which spanned 3 years, concluded with Lanez being convicted of assault and firearm-related felonies. The incident caused a significant impact on both artists' careers and ignited discussions about various issues, including black victims' reluctance to engage with police, gender dynamics in hip-hop online toxicity, and the challenges faced by black women. Los Angeles Superior Court Judge David Hereford acknowledged the complexity of the case and the conflicting portrayals of Lanez as both a kind individual and someone who committed a violent act. Megan Thee Stallion testified that Lanez fired a gun at her, causing her injuries, and expressed how the incident has deeply affected her life. Lanez in the statement expressed remorse for his actions and took responsibility for his wrongdoing. Despite his request for leniency, the judge handed down the 10-year sentence. Still in the U.S., the White House has announced that there is currently no agreed-upon framework to formalize a deal that would involve Saudi Arabia recognizing Israel. National Security spokesman John Kirby stated that discussions are ongoing and that there is no established set of negotiations or framework to solidify the normalization of relations or other security considerations between the two countries. Media reports had earlier suggested that Saudi Arabia and the United States were working on a potential new deal that could lead to the normalization of relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel within the next 9 to 12 months. The reported deal was said to include significant concessions from Israel in relation to a Palestinian state. Recent visits by high-profile U.S. officials to Saudi Arabia have indicated warming ties between the two nations. These visits have involved discussions on various topics, including terrorism and Yemen, but the potential normalization of relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel has remained a significant agenda item during these interactions. And that's how we conclude the morning news. Thank you for watching. But remember, the world keeps turning, and so does the news. Whatever happens, Souq News will always be here to give you the updates. I'm Blessing AG. Stay with Ayo and, of course, Ola on the rest part of L Exchange.
From Africa to the Middle East and to the West, I think a good number of positive developments has happened since the last time we were on the program. So it's time to talk about those things. Once again, I'm Ola Olua. Ayo Jimmy.
Yes, it's good to wake up with good news from across the world. And I think maybe we'll start from Nigeria.
Of course.
Yes. The 15 billion naira finance to,
allocated to
safer schools
initiative
in 2023.
Yes.
Yeah, for me, I think it's expected. If you look at the fact that several parts of the country, especially in the north, have been, victims of violence, of unrest, and so on and so forth, and of course, school children get affected. We still recall the Chibok girls that were, kidnapped, and some other schools that faced this particular problem. Now, if the government is saying, okay, going forward, though what will be, we should be able to safeguard these children and protect them from getting affected by conflict, because every day that you keep a child out of school, either because of conflict or any other human-induced unrest, you are really delaying the fulfillment of a particular destiny. So this Safer Schools initiative is very welcome, but I would have thought we should look more in the direction of not even allowing the conflict to get to the schools. Because if you look at this lines, it says that the primary objective of the initiative is to ensure that children affected by conflicts and insecurity can continue their education without disruption. Why let them get affected by it in the first place? That's justice. So why should they be? We should take measures to ensure that they don't get affected in the first place, because this seems to be like a reactive measure. Once they are affected, we just want to ensure that they continue their studies. That's my take on that.
Well, it's also very important for us to note that we're told that this 15 billion naira will cover 50% of the highest risk public schools during the medium-term period of 2023 to 2026. So it's not just 15 billion naira for this year alone. It's between 2023 to 2026. But let me quickly link this to another event that happened yesterday, organized by the Nigerian police. Okay. And it saw the National Security Advisor, the new one, Noor Ribadu, speak to safety in our schools. And he has also said that they will prioritize, some of those schools to ensure that preventive measures are put in place to even prevent these attacks in the first place. So you talked about a reactionary measure. They also spoke about a preventive measure. I think so far the Bola Tinubu administration is doing, well in terms of ensuring that our children, have good schools to go to and that they are safe while learning. I really hope to see how this will turn out. I hope this funds will be deployed, adequately, appropriately, and we pray never to see another school attack, this year.
We sincerely pray.
Yes.
So beyond the funding issue, one part of it that delights me is the fact that there seems to be an instruction. There is not even there's an instruction for all the military and paramilitary agencies to come together and come up with a policy. They are meant to come up with a national plan that would ensure that this works, because there have been instances where we have this kind of tension between agencies of government, security apparatus of government. Now they are looking for collaboration, which is key for this.
Yes, you're talking about the technical committee or the technical working group that was constituted at this event. Definitely. Let's quickly move from that to another major development here. We'll talk about the Niger political crisis. And, well, we heard in the news that European flights are facing disruptions and flight suspensions across Africa. Well, I think this is majorly because there are limited routes linking Africa to the other parts of the world. But with this challenge now, I hope that the investors or the stakeholders in the aviation industry will find solution to this so that we can have more routes connecting this part of the world to other parts of the world. Because with the way things are now, these airline operators need to look for alternative routes, longer routes, which will definitely impact on the price or the cost of traveling from Africa to other parts of the world, especially the western part of Africa. I just hope that people can see the opportunity in this. It will require some investment, I believe, but I think there's always opportunity in any difficulty.
Nobody prays for war, but when war comes, we have to adapt. You adapt and you evolve. Maybe the last 2 years, nobody saw this coming. And when they were planning, when the aircrafts or the airlines were planning their, routine, their routes, they never saw this coming. But now this speaks to being proactive, devising, measures to counter any disruptions. Now, disruptions are part of the world. Things happen. What will happen will happen. How we respond to them is what really matters. Like you said, if we can't access some part of Africa through Niger, then there should be some other route. Maybe they may be longer, but all of us will realize the fact that it's just temporary, because at some point the war will be over. But while the war exists, while we, why the unrest? But there's no war as it is now. While the unrest, exists now in Niger Republic, all of us are paying, the price for it. Like we do say, when people say, okay, let's have war, let's have this, you have no idea what war can do.
How it can affect you.
The supply chain disruption alone is enough to cause a lot of unrest in some other parts of the world. But we just hope that this is resolved quickly. But in the meantime, we adapt and we evolve. That's my take on that.
Yes, and I think this is something that African countries should learn from the Middle Eastern countries. I mean, the likes of the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and co. They do not wait for problems to happen before they come up with initiatives, before they come up with developmental initiatives. But before I move away from the Niger crisis, let me quickly mention that the 14th Emir of Kano and the former CBN governor, Sanusi Mohammed, has met with the Niger military leaders, and he gave a report of the meeting to President Bola Tinubu yesterday. Yesterday as well, President Bola Tinubu met with some Islamic scholars. Remember that the last time we spoke with Sam on this, we were like, okay, we should look for more diplomatic ways to solve these issues. There are back channels. There are some non-state actors that can mediate and help speak with the people involved so that peace can be resolved. So I believe that is what is happening now. Islamic scholars have been involved. They've been asked to also find a way to speak with these people. We also have traditional rulers speaking with them. Let's see how this will turn out in the coming weeks.
Well, it's okay for us to explore other, back channels, other diplomatic back channels to resolve crisis. But while the while the religious leaders are speaking to Niger Republic commanders, so to speak, in a particular segment, Russia is also speaking to them from another corner. Now, the question is a friction between religious affiliation and economic, possibilities. Where do you, pitch your tent, really? A man that is hungry, essentially, may not be religious. You may not, the preaching of an imam may not mean anything to you if you're hungry. Russia is, with all the body language, Putin is fraternizing with the Nigerians at this point in time, and they are being encouraged to do what they are doing in a particular context. So let's just hope that yes, we can use the religious affinity to appeal to these Nigerians who are bent to say no to everything that is now West African. They are calling the bluff of ECOWAS as if in Africa they say what lies on the surface is very shallow as compared to what is beneath the surface. They are emboldened by Russia's affiliation, by Russia's interest, and let's just see how it goes. I just hope the back channels will work, and Niger will ultimately realize that we are still part of Africa. They are still part of us, and they don't belong elsewhere.
From that, let's move to Saudi Arabia. You heard in the news that the Saudi Arabian government is partnering with a Dutch company to create a synthetic climate so that they can grow crops in areas where they could not in the past. Isn't that amazing? Synthetic, like a synthetic farm, artificial climate that will ensure that they are able to grow crops. And this is coming at a time where there are even countries with the natural provisions for these things that are still importing food. But we're speaking of, they're trying to look for ways to make the best of their deserts. They have a lot of, deserted areas there, to see how they can boost their food production. Isn't that amazing?
It is amazing. They say necessity is the mother of invention. If you look at the nation of Israel in particular, if you read the story of Israel, Israel became a very big agricultural tech country basically because of need. Israel was carved out in a desert amongst enemies, quote and unquote, and they had to invent at the speed of their need. Same thing with Saudi Arabia now. They are one of the largest importers of food because of the non-cultivable expanses of land that they have there, basically because of climate. But now they are latching on to technological possibilities and saying, okay, God has given us the brain to control the elements, and let us do it. Of course, they're not doing it alone. They are partnering with a Dutch company, Van der Hoeven, which is good. They are investing $500 billion to ensure that this happens, that this is made possible. Now, if we can, there is rain seeding. People seed rain. So if we can control the elements and have a particular land that is like 15 soccer fields in size where horticultural products can be produced, this is encouraging. Once again, it speaks to an intentional governance by the Saudi Arabia, which the rest of the world can, emulate. And like I said, they are not just doing this in agriculture. Even in sports, it's an intentional move towards, dominating a particular sphere that has been either dominated by some other people.
No, it's not just in sports, even in tech. Okay, you mentioned $500 billion. The $500 billion is actually the investment they are pumping into a city that they are building called Neom. Yeah. The Neom city is a high-tech city in the northwestern part of the region. So this artificial or synthetic climate farm is a part of the Neom city. The investment that is going into this artificial farm is about $120 million thereabout. Let's see how this will turn out for Saudi Arabia. I like to see developments like this, intentional, moves to make life easier.
We are blessed in this part of the world, essentially. We don't really have to create artificial cities. We have our natural cities. We have rains. Rains come when they should come, even in the north.
How much have we been able to
Well, the thing is that we are happy we have a new government in power now that seems to be very strategic in making things happen. It's just one thing at a time. So when trees fall on trees, the topmost ones are first removed. Today we are still battling with the fuel subsidy removal crisis. Once everything stabilizes and more income comes in and more revenues are generated, I am sure we'll begin to look into, and let's not forget that this regime also came up with agri policy, a very comprehensive one that is tailored towards our own peculiar needs. It's a bespoke policy document for Nigeria and by Nigerians, and I hope we'll get there one of these days. That's just it.
Yes, let's quickly also touch on what is happening in Italy now. Italy has passed a 40% tax on the profits that banks earn from the the surge in interest rates causing a significant decline in share prices. You know, when the government wants 40% of the profit that, you know, businesses make. You know, just yesterday we talked about the new tax committee set up by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in Nigeria, and how our tax to GDP ratio is just slightly over 10% thereabout. But these are other parts of the world. Although the government is promising that, yeah, we'll use this, you know, taxes we collect to build roads, to create better housing facilities for people and all of that. But you see that kind of a thing happening in this part of the world, in Africa or in Nigeria, so to say?
Well, a lot of factors will determine whether that is possible here or not. This is one of the fiscal policies that governments across the world use. Tax. You can increase tax, but you don't just do it for the ones doing it. I mean, you do it because it has a role to play. We are not in Italy. We don't know the variables that were considered before the government there, you know, came to this conclusion. But all I know is that if you put the tax to the use you claim you will put it to, after a while, people will not really complain. Of course, it's not very easy. 40% is huge, to be sincere. It is huge. The idea of you are slashing 40% out of my profit could be very disturbing. But from a patriotic standpoint, if the government would keep to its words and use the fund for the purpose for which they are, you know, collected, I think after a while, people will understand, okay, maybe sometimes it could be a case of short-term pains for long-term gains, because at the end of the day, it is all they have, and they must join hands together to ensure that it grows. So it can happen here also, but there has to be communication between us or among Nigerians to make it happen.
Yeah, it's good that the Italian government has a 60-day period to implement this policy. So it's very important that stakeholders are engaged so that we don't have a case of tax evasion, because from talking about it from this part of the world, 40% you know, tax seems rather high. So there needs to be adequate engagement with the relevant stakeholders so that everyone really agrees, you know, to make this happen, and we can see some major developments in that part of the world. And that's how far we can go on this segment on the early exchange. It's time to move on. We'll go on a short break. We'll be right back.
Thank you for staying tuned. You're still watching Early Exchange on Souq News. Today, we dedicate it to media work and media workers. Just yesterday, the NBC had a stakeholder meeting with practitioners and media owners in Nigeria. And the Bond Secretary said something which is like a challenge to, you know, media workers, that we don't put our issues on the front burners, that we have the airwaves that we're not exploiting, we're not using our airwaves to talk about our issues, the issues that affect us as journalists or as broadcast workers. And so we have learned our lessons, and today we're talking about media work, the challenges, the possibilities, the threats, the opportunities, and all other issues that came out of yesterday's meeting or stakeholders forum. Olaoluwa, we start from the challenges facing your media workers. Let me have a take on that first.
Yes, the challenges facing media workers are numerous. You know, if I start to talk, I doubt if we will leave the space. But I'll attempt to mention some. We're talking about safety and press freedom, of course. Historically, you know, being a media person has always been sort of a dangerous job because, of course, there are different people who do not want you to, you know, put out certain stories. And sometimes you go to report in places that are really, really dangerous to say. You know, we have journalists who have died, you know, on the job. We have equipment destroyed, you know, journalists harassed, you know, verbally, physically, and all of that. So these are some of the challenges that comes with the job. You know, we also need to talk about threats. You know, threats have been issued, so to say. But, you know, the thing that really baffles me about the job, or the thing that I really want to talk about, is the need for us to want to give a perfect image or to want to look perfect when we come, you know, on here on TV. A good number of us have issues, you know. So I know a good number of journalists and, you know, and presenters and broadcasters that just before you see them on air, you never can imagine, or you never could have imagined, you know, the threats they have had to, you know, take just before then. But there's always this need to want to look perfect. Somebody still said something to me yesterday that as a journalist, no one cares about how you feel. You just need to do the job. And these are some of the things that we talk about.
I like to agree with you there, because journalists are the ones that are going to territories that are feared by people. Where people fear, we dare, essentially, because we owe the populace, we owe the viewers a duty to inform them of infractions in the system, inform them of anomalies and the excesses of the powers that be. We are the only ones who speak truth to power, as they say. And when you speak truth to power, it comes at a consequence. Sometimes people have to pay with their dear lives, okay, and which is not really something we should be proud of as a people. So we are endangered in the context, maybe just like some other people are endangered people. Now, apart from the issue of, you know, safety of journalists, what about the remuneration of journalists?
Very important.
It's one of the challenges. There is this talk of brown envelopes in this part of the world, basically because most journalists are not earning as much as they should earn. Of course, media owners will tell you that, okay, they are also playing within the confines of available resources and the economic vagaries of our time, which is a valid you know, argument in the first place. But, you know, who would offer a CNN reporter a brown envelope? To what purpose? What's the welfare of journalists like? What's the welfare of media workers like? We are the only ones who don't go on break when others are on break. Every day of the week, you turn on your TV system, your TV set or your radio set, and somebody is there entertaining you, informing you, and educating you. Yet, welfare is a critical issue. I think for journalists, it's more of a calling. Do you feel that you are called to do this job? Because if you must look at remuneration, you won't do that.
Well, I think this is something that we definitely need to work on. We're at a time where different professions, different vocational practitioners across the world are calling for higher pay. Who is calling for higher pay for journalists? We are humans too. I tell people are humans before they are whatever profession they belong to. And yes, journalists deserve to be paid well. You know, our pays deserve to be reviewed upwardly from time to time, because see, the economic situation in Nigeria, in Africa, and all around the world is not something that we are immune to. You know, as the cost of living is rising globally, it's also rising for journalists. And this is not just a matter of, if you know that you don't have passion for this job, don't come into it. We have to be intentional about ensuring that the welfare of journalists, you know, are factored into everything they do, because we are humans first. And just like every other human, just like every other human being, you know, the way your physical state, your mental state, your psychological state determines the kind of job that you are able to do, the quality of the job you're able to do. So I think this is also a major challenge that needs to be addressed.
While we'll still talk about the welfare of journalists, but we are accused of, we are talking, I mean, speaking for ourselves. Well, we were told to speak for ourselves yesterday anyway by MC Bangoshi there. But then there's this issue of media ownership and influence. You are assumed to have editorial independence, but he who pays the piper dictates the tune. At what point do you claim to have editorial independence when there is an agenda from the media owner who decides what you say and how you say it? Especially government-funded, media houses. To what extent can they really speak true to the powers that be? Because you are speaking true to the one who pays your salary, and salary can hang, essentially. So this is a key issue for media practitioners. How much of freedom do you have to express yourself? Okay, now that is just from our own point. But yesterday, essentially, at the stakeholders forum that was organized by NBC and born and other allied,
that's the Nigerian Broadcast Commission and the Broadcast Organization of
Nigeria.
Okay,
so one thing that came to the to the fore, one of the main things that came to the fore was the issue of debt recovery by NBC. NBC is saying that a lot of media houses are not living up to their financial obligations to the commission. And so they give a September 9 deadline for all defaulters to ensure that they pay up or they have their licenses revoked from them. Of course, this didn't sit down well with a lot of people. But then, first and foremost, let's just hear from the horse's mouth. Let's hear the position of the NBC, the DG of NBC, as it speaks to this issue of debt recovery by NBC. Let's have the video, please.
All in this noble profession. It's an opportunity for all of us that are here to sit down and look at one another and let's discuss what is the problem with the industry. It's not just to tell you our problems. We also want to hear your problem.
Excuse me.
We may not solve
what are you doing? They'll be giving you a
signal. I'm sure you can solve our problem.
How will you hear when you're
pressing your phone? Make sure that we do.
They'll be giving signal. Everybody will see that. What are you people doing there?
Solve some of your problems. Where possible.
Because if you know you don't want to, leave this studio.
A family meeting.
Things will be happening. They'll be giving you, say, everybody will sit down and relax.
Have up till September 9 to redeem their debt. That is September 2023 to liquidate such debt. After September 9, 2023, debtors' licenses shall have their license revoked and their frequency reassigned to those who are waiting. It may interest you to know that at present we have over 500 applications waiting to get license from NBC. So those of you
That was the DG of National Broadcasting Commission, Malam Balarabe Shehu Lela, speaking about the non-payment of license fees by broadcast owners, media station owners in Nigeria. And he did mention the fact that they have up till September 9 to, clear all the backlogs. Otherwise, they have their licenses revoked. And that was a statement that, a lot of media owners and practitioners yesterday found out that you don't have to threaten us. This is meant to be a stakeholders, forum in the first place. Why are you threatening us? Because you are not really being sensitive to the economic vagaries of our time. That's what they said, essentially.
Yes, because if you look at it, the real question is that why are a good number of media organizations struggling to pay these license fees? And this licensing fee that we're talking about, it has been a thing in Nigeria over the years, in broadcasting to pay for licensing fee. But do media organizations in other parts of the world also pay this amount? How much do they pay compared to what we pay in Nigeria? And what's even how easy has it been to do business in Nigeria, especially for these media organizations? I know that a good number of media organizations are struggling. In fact, there was a time I said something that if you see any media practitioner, or if you see any media owner, or you see any presenter or broadcaster or journalist whatsoever, show them love, because people are just they're struggling. There's really a lot that goes into sustaining a media organization, and the question is how well has the NBC been able to help? The whole idea of having a regulatory body is not just so that they can talk tough and issue sanctions whenever people err or go against the codes or the rules. It is also to prevent some of these infractions from happening in the first place. So how well has NBC been able to help media houses generate money? How well has the NBC been able to help them run their business well? And also prevent some of those infractions that we talk about. In fact, to some media organizations, when you talk about NBC, they think sanctions, they think money. They see a government money generating commission, which is not really supposed to be.
Well, essentially, NBC is just a regulatory body for media practitioners in Nigeria. Not really, their duty is not to help you generate. They can give you an enabling environment to generate income, okay? And let me just make it clear that the license fee they collect is backed by law. It's a legally, authorized source of revenue to NBC. And the DG said that NBC is not funded by the government. So essentially, they make their money from these fees. And if you look at Section 30 of the NBC Act, it provides that the NBC may, by order, make regulations for the licensing of broadcasting stations and for the fees payable for such licenses. And these fees are, they are of two types. There's a one-time application fee, and there's the annual license fee, which is 2.5% of the annual income of broadcast stations. So they did say that, okay, 2.5% is not even up to the 7.5% VAT that is paid on transactions in Nigeria. But then, one of the participants said, okay, are you charging us 2.5% of profit or of losses? Because a whole number of us are incurring losses, not making profit. And maybe we should just hear from them, because the Secretary of BON, Mr. MC Bangboshe, spoke. And of course, the media workers themselves spoke to this issue. Let's have their responses from the studio. How did they respond to this, challenge posed to them by NBC?
I think at this particular time, let me restate that BON will not oppose NBC in any way, that will not make stations to pay the yearly fee that they agreed to pay according to the position of law. And again, let me thank NBC for agreeing to call this particular meeting, which I may say in a way that it is at instance of BON having been discussing this matter of license issue probably the last 3 months, when NBC has been complaining and telling us at the level of BON that they want to take some actions, and we have been appealing to them that let's discuss with stations and most especially with those in government, particularly on behalf of the state-owned stations. Because I know very well that many state stations are not doing well. It is not because you don't have the professionals there, but you know, in political dispensation, a lot of things happen. Lack of funding has been hindering the performance of many stations, state-owned stations. And I'm very aware too that many private stations are not even breaking even. And this is as a result of the very harsh economic environment that we are facing in Nigeria. But that does not preclude us from performing the necessary obligations that we're supposed to perform to NBC, most especially on the issue of the yearly license fee. So I would really want to thank NBC for this opportunity.
Laying this occasion, and I like to start with the summary of what I heard the DG said. Those who are unable to pay their fees, their license fees or license renewals fees, should return the licenses, or they will be reported to appropriate quarters. There are more than 500 applicants, maybe 500 or 5,000. 500 in the waiting. As my first question, will NBC be viable just by issuing licenses? If NBC cannot be viable just by issuing licenses, then we should start talking about solutions. And there are solutions. Then license fees remains the same for over 30 years. I'm happy that it has remained the same, because from what I've heard, we are talking in dollars now. And $1 goes for about almost $1 goes for about almost 1,000 naira. And when you are talking about raising money to import parts or equipment for radio or television, I wonder how many can afford to do that replacement. And that takes me to the 2.5% that NBC requires from private radio and television. Is that 2.5% of loss? Or 2.5% of profit? And I would like NBC to conduct a research as to how many stations have made any profit in the past 10 years.
Moving forward, compulsorily asking stations to make remittances when there are none is out of the way. The way out is this: for government to initially put up a committee to review multiple taxes that we are paying. An average station will pay VAT, you pay fiscal responsibility, you will pay BON statutory deductions of 150,000 naira. I don't think there's anything left for anybody to run any station, considering the vagaries of what we are going through in the country now. The high cost of diesel, the high cost of this. The only thing I can say is that if the government can harmonize the so many multiple taxes that we are paying, I think.
Okay. Those were responses or reactions from members of BON, right from the Secretary, Yemisi Bangboshe, and other respondents who said, okay, we are not saying we don't want to pay, really. We really want to pay, but we're not making profits.
I think I can really relate with some of the things that were said at that event yesterday. A good number of media houses are not making profit. They are struggling to even make ends meet. So what are we doing? He said, somebody mentioned something about setting up a committee to even look at the multiple taxations, but I think someone also needs to intervene in terms of helping these media houses know the other ways to generate profit. You know, because things are really tough now. The purchasing powers of media are customers. I mean, in terms of people that run adverts, you know, people that pay money to media houses, the purchasing power is really reducing. I know a good number of media houses that have not reviewed their rate cards in years. They have not been able to do so because even the ones they have, the one they've been using for years, you know, people still struggle to pay, you know, for adverts at that rate. They have to give discounts and discounts and discounts. You know, sometimes they even have to allow some companies do advertorials for free just to encourage them to keep coming. So it's really tough out there, and the government really needs to intervene if they want to keep collecting the taxes from time to time.
Okay, we will return to that discussion after a short break. Let's go on a very short break now. When we come back, one other stakeholder, one major key stakeholder spoke about to what purpose they are using the fines that they collect from people for. We'll talk about it when we come back from this break. Don't go anywhere. All right, welcome back. You're still watching Early Exchange on Souq, and we are still talking about, fallout from yesterday's stakeholders engagement organized by the National Broadcasting Commission. Okay, now, one of the stakeholders that were there yesterday, it was Aro Leonard. Aro Leonard is a known face there, and he did raise a particular point, which was very germane, really. He said, okay, NBC levies fines on defaulting organizations for different infractions. You say something wrong, tomorrow maybe you have to pay fine. But what use are you putting the fines to? Is it just to take care of the welfare of NBC and its workforce? He is of the opinion that, well, part of the fines paid by defaulting organizations should be used to train them so they don't default again. So if I make a mistake on air, or if a particular station makes a mistake and it is fined for saying the wrong thing, maybe you are inciting violence or whatever, now part of the fines you paid should be used to train you against committing the same blunder in the future. And this was very welcome by participants at the training.
I think I agree with that, because I can't remember the last time I went for a training organized by the NBC. I know a good number of their engagements are usually with media owners, but these owners are not the ones on screen. They're not the ones, on the mic, and the ones on screen and the ones on the mic are the ones that are most likely to even go against the rules a good number of times, because they're the ones that speak, they're the ones that are seen and all of that. So I think it's not just about collecting money. Use the money to help this media organizations so that you can keep having if you want to keep collecting the money, or you want to keep seeing the money to collect, you need to ensure that business is booming, as usual for the media organizations. Maybe we should have that particular soundbite from Aro Leonard and we'll hear from him himself. Aro Leonard, can we have that soundbite from him?
Of fines. Now, we fine a station 5 million naira, but nothing is done to help that station not repeat the same mistake. And my last statement was this: if you fine a station, plow that money back into building that station. It's part of what has led to the NBC Institute that is coming up. Yes, agreed. But there must be deep down, NBC must be involved in training that station directly. There are so many professionals here. Bring me, take me, go train the station. They won't make that mistake again. Now, if you find a station and they repeat the same mistake, and that mistake causes a problem that burns down this country, what is the use of that fine? I've been involved in media peace day activities since 2009. I coordinated with Bond. That is what has given us peaceful elections that we've been having over the years. We are all here. They received our letters. They were part of it. Nobody knew how it happened. We did it in the last Anambra elections. Now, that's the importance of the media. So if you're finding somebody for doing hate speech, inciting statements and things like that, are you helping them not to make that mistake again? So we have peaceful elections.
Aro Leonard there talking about the need for NBC to use part of the fines, like we discussed, on training the defaulting organization there. Okay, one other issue that was raised at the forum yesterday was the issue of quacks coming into the field of play. Before now, there were regulations about who comes into broadcasting. To even have the opportunity to come and say your name on air, you must be vetted by people, okay? There were people who would do auditioning for you, and they will not just do voice auditioning for you. They guard you, and they guide you into what to say and what not to say. But today, with the advent of social media, everybody, in quote, is a broadcaster. Everybody, in quote, is a journalist. Everybody is a media practitioner. And so, we have a lot of people saying all the wrong things. And a single statement on social media is strong enough to cause chaos in the society. So one of the measures that NBC and allied organizations are trying to come up with is to set up what is called Nigeria Broadcasting Institute, which was kickstart in Abuja. This is like, okay, maybe an equivalent of the law school or the medical school, where those who would even come on air must be certified by that institute. It is said that before they even issue you license as as a media owner, when you apply for a license, they will ask you to show them your workforce, those who will be working with you, and each of them must also be certified.
But is this an attempt to train more media practitioners or an attempt to make more money? Because if you ask me, are there no other institutions responsible for training? For example, there is a National Broadcast Academy, and once you go train there, you have a certificate. So is adding more institutes the solution to the problem, or ensuring that the people that we have on ground even attend the existing trainings? Because there are media broadcasters that don't even have any form of certification whatsoever. Of course, there are universities that train broadcasters that are coming up. You know, there's the BSc degree. There's the Nigerian Union of Journalists. They have an institute as well. You know, so there are institutes. But if we add another institute or another training institution, and we don't ensure that having a certificate in this institution is a main requirement, and anyone that comes on air in any institution has this certification or can show evidence that he or she has been well trained, then we're still going to fall back to the same thing. Building a new institution, okay, what if people don't attend the institution and they still find their way into the broadcasting system? Okay. Just as we have today.
I'll come back to that question when we return from this sound. But let's have the soundbite where the DG of NBC and other people spoke about the need for training practitioners. Let's have it, please.
Be open very soon, and letters will be distributed to all stations. And next time when you want to apply, you should know that you must have your staff trained. Without trained staff, you will not be issued license. Thank you very much. And it has to do with training. I'd like to inform us here that a solution is already on ground. And that solution is Society of Nigerian Broadcasters. As at the moment, there are over 1,000 members that are fully registered. And very soon, people will begin to see state stations being inaugurated. And before you can practice as a broadcaster, you will have to write an exam. And by so doing, sanity will be brought to the industry. But you can't be a lawyer without going through all the processes. So in this industry too, very soon, you begin to see the secretariat is working assiduously on this matter.
I think the Broadcast Institute has come up with a training format for would-be presenters or announcers. I think that should go a long way to help in bringing down the incidence of fake news or dangerous speech. I refuse to use hate speech. I use dangerous speech.
You heard it there, okay, and you were asking earlier before we went on that break that is this not just a duplication of efforts that we have institutes here and there, and maybe it's just a money-making venture? I don't really believe that, really. Fine, there might be other, or there are other institutes that are training journalists and training other media workers, but you wouldn't rule out the need for the regulatory agency itself to have its own scope, because they can define the standards they want, okay? And if they have been approved by law to regulate the practice of media in Nigeria, then essentially part of their mandate is to train media workers as well. And if they want to have an institute where media workers could be trained, I would not want to see it as just a money-making venture, because for real, despite all these other training agencies that you have or schools that we have, we still have a lot of quacks in the system.
Well, yes, we have a lot of quacks in the system, but is that because we don't have enough institutes to train them? You know, if we are talking about not having enough institutions to train broadcasters, then we can think of adding more. But in this case, I know that it's the NBC's responsibility to set a curriculum for media training and practice in Nigeria. So why not they work with these other institutes coming up, or the institutes we have here and there, to ensure that the right thing is being done? But at this point, I think we have a media consultant in the studio. We mentioned him earlier. Ari Leonard joins us right about now. Good morning, Ari Leonard.
How are you doing?
His voice was not very loud yesterday, but they heard him very loudly because he came up with a particular position that others didn't say. You were the one who said that, okay, they should be using part of the money, part of the fines they levy on stations to train them as well. Could you please elaborate on this before we ask some other questions?
It's maybe where we should take it from is where Ola talked about the role of the NBC as with regards curriculum. Now, if you go through the NBC Act, the key parts of the act, most broadcasters dwell mainly on the fines, the fact that you have to pay 2.5% and all that. But the main purpose of establishing the NBC is to help the media organization grow. And one of the key functions is to help improve the curriculum for broadcasting in the country. So they are supposed to work with universities, work with whatever institution that trains anybody on anything that is related to broadcasting to help improve the industry. So that's a core function of the NBC. It's quite surprising that this academic thing they are talking about, institute, is coming up at this time. It's something that should have been since. Now, whether NBC should set up its own institute, I'm not very sure about that, but it's a plus because you always have finishing schools. You always have professional bodies. You always have professional schools that can train you things that the schools do not train. What will be the core focus for me, because I am part of those that encourage the NBC to set up that institute. And what's the core thing for me is what the curriculum would be. Would it be a duplication of some things we already have in schools and other things, or you pick those specialized areas that are missing? Now, we set up an academy, West Africa Broadcast and Media Academy, WABMA. Now, the courses we started with are things that we've found out are areas that broadcasters are having problems with, that regular other academies are not taking care of. So the NBC could also do that kind of work, identify all those areas and then work on it. Now, to that question about fines. Now, the reason NBC fines stations is because they break the rules. They go against things stipulated in the broadcasting code. That broadcasting code is not NBC's code. It's National Broadcasting Code. It's put together by broadcasters and the NBC. And there's also input from government agencies and things. So it's a collective document that everybody has agreed. So when you go against the things written there, then the NBC comes up with a fine to fine you. Now, the reason why a lot of broadcasters go against those things is because they lack understanding of those things. Now, all those things in the code are technical terms. Things you could use on air, it's not everybody that would know it. So if you don't train people properly on how to produce a program, how to handle a difficult guest, because the biggest fines come mainly from guests that are brought in, not even what the broadcasters say, but it's how they react to what the guest does. And these are technical skills that you need real deep, in-depth training. So if they fine you as much as 5 million naira, a lot of stations in Nigeria today don't make more than 1.5 million naira a month. Oh. So if you are fined 5 million naira because someone committed a crime, why can't you use that money to train that broadcaster? And then you say the reason why you're doing it is because hate speech can cause problems in the country. There could be civil unrest because of those kind of comments. And yet you don't think it is necessary to do real deep training to make sure that these things don't happen. They say prevention is better than what? Cure. So why do you behave like those policemen we have in somewhere that just wait for you to beat traffic and hold you? Why not try, when you see someone doing something that could cause problems, try to stop the person before it gets to that level?
Yes, I know I've spoken with an NBC official who said that a good number of times before these fines are slammed against media organizations, there would have been warnings. and warnings. Is that enough to balance things up in that area?
See, I can warn you not to do something, but if I don't show you how really the way not to do it, what would it happen? And that was done, the offense would have been done by one person. And you have 20 other people in the station. Now, sometimes the station, to save face, will take that person off air. In some cases, the NBC would even advise the station, yank this person off air. The next rookie comes in who has not been trained. It would even do worse. And look at it. You have so many stations. New licenses are coming. New stations are coming in. Where would they be trained? The people who have been trained, the senior ones, are now leaving the scene. The economy is bad. Stations can't pay salaries. So rather than working in a station as a trained broadcaster, I would go work in a communications firm or oil firm or something like that. But they have to fill that space. And new ones will come in. Who is training them?
Okay. Yesterday, the Secretary of Born, challenged media workers that, okay, the NBC code is renewed at intervals, like we all know. But before every renewal, they would always send out circulars to stations that bring your points of view. What changes do you want? Yet, only very few media houses respond. He even said only one media house responded out of the law that we have. This is like, okay, we're asking you to come and make suggestions for improvement, yet you're not doing it. Yet you are blaming us for coming up with, regulations that probably bite your pocket. What's your take on this, essentially?
At several fora, last month in Uyo, 2 months ago, we had this summit of members of private broadcasting radio stations, GMs, and I told them that they are the problem. And that is the truth. When I say that many times, my broadcaster colleagues want to beat me up. But the truth is, we are the problem. Okay, see now we are on air. We are beamed. You could watch us all over. So many stations are on air. We had loads of stations there yesterday. Now, they will just report that event that NBCL, the stakeholders event. People will not spend time like you guys are doing now to go deep down into the issues and bring out all the points so that the NBC learns. Now, we'll promote politicians, we'll promote all kinds of things. Now we are talking about coup in another country. We talk about a lot of things, but we don't talk about ourselves. And broadcasters are the fourth estate of the realm. We determine, we are the omnipresent. We determine what happens, what policies the government takes. But yet, we don't spend time to talk about issues that affect us. The code is not MBC code. It is done by broadcasters. So if broadcasters don't make inputs, no. So the Born Executive Secretary, Dr. Bamgoshe, was right. Some people will say he's being hard, but he's saying the truth. We as broadcasters, we have to step up. Use our airwaves to talk about issues that affect us. And the more we talk about these things and put more effort, there's internal training that could be done in stations, even without spending money. Make it a weekly thing. Before you recruit anybody, encourage that person to go pay some money in some institution to learn if they really want to get the job. Don't just take people because of the beautiful face, nice voice, and you throw them on air. No. And then the other issues with media owners, that is where I hold the NBC. GMs can't even talk to owners. Owners don't understand. They shout down on the GMs. But the NBC can use its cloud and power and pull owners together and school them that, look, oh, these are the things. A GM is talking to an owner about what's in the code and all those. Even state governors, they will say, well, my friend, go away. Do what I tell you to do. And they can't do anything about it.
Yes, I mean to ask you a question about the September 9th deadline given by the NBC.
That's key.
Is it feasible? Licenses will be revoked if media organizations involved don't pay up, or should it be extended? What do you think should be done about this?
Okay, I think it's the way it was communicated, and that is an area the NBC needs to work on, and which is part of what I also pointed out there. These issues have been talked about before. Whenever you call broadcast cards together. First start with what you're doing with what was discussed in the last stakeholder forum, because it sounds like a threat. See the way he said September deadline. Now, my guys in print and some other people could just carry one headline and throw it out there, and it causes problem, confusion. But there is no deadline, according to the explanation the DG later gave after participants raised issues around it. What they are saying is, by that date, go to the MBC and negotiate. If you feel you could be paying 100,000 naira every month, go tell them. They will accept. It's about you making a move. Show commitment. What is leading to this is the reluctance of some stations to pay the MBC license fee. And this is also because a lot of owners, 90% of the owners, are not broadcasters. They don't know what license fee is. Many of them did not even, someone just gave them license, so yeah, start station. You understand? That's why the MBC should get across to the owners, try to use their clout to pull them together, so they know the importance of this.
Okay, Aro Leonard, you are still going to be with us till the end of the show. Today is our day, the media day. We talk about the issues. But then let's go on a very short break. When we come back, then we'll take a look at the welfare of media workers and the hazards and other shades of challenges that face us as practitioners. Please stay.
for whom, to answer the question of for whom, we're trying to formulate the policy. And after we understand for whom we're trying to formulate the policy, we need to be clear on what direction we want to go with the policy. What problem is the policy trying to address on behalf of the stakeholder? And after we've achieved clarity of purpose in that aspect, we engage with the stakeholders. And the first thing about engaging with the stakeholders, we have to be transparent about what we're trying to do. This encourages the stakeholder to, in turn, engage with us and give us feedback about what they want. And the second thing with engaging with the stakeholder is also engaging broadly with different members of our stakeholder group. And then thirdly is to sensitize and make sure we communicate effectively with our stakeholder. Communicating clearly what we're trying to achieve and sensitizing, that is training them or explaining to them as clear as possible, this is what we're trying to do on behalf of you, the stakeholder. And then lastly, getting feedback from the stakeholder and adopting their views and perspective and incorporating that and going back and looking at what we can change or correct about our approach to the problem we're trying to solve on behalf of the stakeholder. That's.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Early Exchange. We get back to the conversation on media practice in Nigeria. And this time we focus on the welfare of media practitioners and also the hazards that they face doing this job. Once again, I'm Ola Oluwawe, Ayojimi is here, and Aaron Leonard of Cleverest Communications is still here. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Aaron Leonard, you're talking about the welfare of media workers. What are the major challenges with welfare of media workers in Nigeria in particular?
Well, you are looking good, so you are well taken care of.
Okay.
That's how it looks.
That's how it looks,
but
right?
a good number of times, media practitioners in Nigeria, they go through a lot, but they have this mindset that no matter what they go through, they must look perfect. They cannot talk about it on air.
It's a duty.
Yeah. And you mentioned something about media practitioners not speaking about their problems. How do you balance it up? Because there's this fear that if I speak about this issue, my employer will have issues with me. It's not ethical. How do you balance this up there?
Okay, it's not about your employer. Why are you here? You're here because of the audience. You're the ones to make us feel good in Nigeria. So you can't come and be complaining to us. So that is your job. That is the profession. That's part of the ethics of the profession. You can't carry your problems from home or problems in the office and put them on air. It's not done. So you have to look good. Huh? So you're well taken care of. So before you get into the profession, you must know why you're there. Now, what makes you look good, and the key thing about welfare is not about money, it's not about pay. It's about that job satisfaction. Am I happy doing what I am doing? There are so many things we do that we don't get paid for, and we do it diligently. When you go on the street, you see some people clearing, the gutter and smiling. The moment you drive past, they give you joy. That's what the profession is about. But now, to the underground issue. It's about the economy of the country. And, but unfortunately, unlike several other sectors, the media is one sector that is, let me say, it's the most. Because whether you have funds to buy diesel or not, you must go on air. If you don't go on air for a particular period, the NBC also comes at you. So you must be on air. Now, you get a license, You don't activate that station within 2 years, you lose it. That's what the law says. So you have to be on air, irrespective of whether dollar cost has skyrocketed, diesel cost has skyrocketed. You don't care. Now, so where the problem is, where what media organizations need to talk about is not the fact whether you're being paid or not, because you can't really, no organization can pay a broadcaster. None. You do more than, you're more important than any pay that the amount they pay the highest worker in the world in an oil company or whatever company can't pay a broadcaster for what the broadcaster does. And what we need to do is let the nation see and understand the importance of broadcasting. Like my Oga Ladi Akeredolu said yesterday, once you turn off broadcasting organization and there's silence, see, the nation is dead. That's the truth. So it's a sector that is very important. So what the government can do is about creating the environment for making things easy. And that is where these license fee issues, the 2.5% you have to pay from your income, that's what it says, income. So that it's not about what your profit, your income. So that's where, you know, government can step in, even though the code has not been reviewed to bring down those things. Government can come in and make a law and say, look, we understand the importance of the broadcast industry. We understand you're finding it difficult to pay your staff, to provide things that you need. For instance, many broadcasters have to use their funds to go out, to do vox pops, to record reports, to go into the villages, to do things. You know, the station can't, it's not that the station doesn't want to pay, but the money is not just there. If we don't buy the diesel, we'll think of buying diesel first, but we'll think of any other thing. You know, because we have to go on air. So the government can come up and create avenues that will make things easy. Avenues for importing broadcast equipment without what they call those fees you have to pay. You know, organizing, for instance, even this training we are talking about. That's why stations can't train anybody, because the money is not there. Providing fellowships, awards for outstanding broadcaster. When I sacrifice my money to do something, let there be something that the government can use to reward me. You know, things like that, you know, would really help. But it's about the economy. It's not about broadcasters not wanting, owners not wanting to pay their staff or take care of the welfare, but the economy is just not it.
A good number of times when we talk about welfare, we only think financial. But what about the psychological, the mental aspect? Yeah. A good number of times, media practitioners are the first to break the bad news. In fact, you don't just, you know, unlike an average media consumer, you watch it on TV, you listen to it, but as a media practitioner, you have to ruminate on it, you have to think about it, you need to work with, you know, and it affects the mental health of a good number of media practitioners. How do we address this issue?
Now, I'm glad that some people, I remember my friend, Lady Gwen, she has a book, something Naked, just sharing our experience as a broadcaster, you know, how it affected our mental health. That's a book broadcasters need to get, and I think maybe you need to bring her on air to talk about this. And there are a few people like that coming out to do such. Now, I worked in the BBC for 14 years. The BBC takes those kind of issues seriously. They have lots of training on mental health. There are several BBC staff that have gone into depression. Within my time there, 2 of our colleagues committed suicide. That's how bad it could get. And it's because of these things you talk about. I watched a film, something about the eyes that saw, something like that, about a journalist who went to Haiti during the earthquake. He was just to film and leave, but he was so touched, and he tried to rescue someone, and the building collapsed on him. You know, you see these things every day. So when you go home, you can't sleep. You have to think, it keeps bugging you, and you have to be nice and looking as sharp as you are, come out. You know, the moment you leave, you go back again. So we need to do a lot more on mental health awareness. And then let the environment, that's why, you know, one of the problems, I'll take civil service in Nigeria, one of the reasons why Nigerian civil servants always look dull, depressed, is because of the way the building is. When you go to the US, you see the way they paint everything. They are doing sports. They make it flamboyant everywhere, looking bright colors. Go to our own offices, dull colors, broken chairs. You know, media organizations, owners need to try paint your offices, let the office look nice. If you're HR in a broadcast organization, your job is not to give people letter when they come late. Be nice to them, make them happy, ask about their families, how are you doing? You know, those kind of talks. Owners don't shout on your staff. GMs, you know, irrespective of the pressure the owner is putting on you to generate revenue, just look for ways, creative ways to make everybody happy. Crack jokes, you know, gist with yourselves, you know, yap each other.
Sometimes we forget that journalists are also creatives, you know.
Now, let's talk about the policy aspect of this. Are there policies or initiatives put in place to ensure that the welfare of media workers, you know, is taken care of?
Yes, that is one area also where the broadcasting code is lacking, okay? But if you go to the Act, and the Act says help the organizations grow, ensure that the broadcasters maintain certain professional ethics, right? Paying salary is a right. It's one of the ethics you should adhere to as a broadcast owner. So that's where the NBC comes in. And then the NUJ, Broadcasting Organization of Nigeria, honestly, I'll give credit to names like Segun Olale, the former Born Executive Secretary and the current Born Executive Secretary. They've made moves when they've gotten some certain complaints about certain stations doing certain things, not taking care of this. They try to intervene subtly because they are colleagues. They can't wield any big stick. But NBC, in checking the records, as you're asking for annual returns, should also check if staff salary is being paid. And certain sanctions also should be meted on them. If it means broadcasting organizations merging when you can't cope, let it happen. So that at least there are stations owing staff 8 months, 1 year as we speak. They go on air every day, and nobody can't cry to anybody, you know.
What is the place of media associations and unions in this? For example, in the broadcast space, I know there's the Broadcasting Organization of Nigeria, but if you go for meetings like that, you see more of media owners than the media practitioners themselves. You know, you can't speak to many associations for presenters, for example. When media houses owe money, there's nobody to fight for them. We have the NLC, we have the TUC for the civil servants and other workers. But what is the role of joining a union, joining an association, or even creating one if need be?
Okay, there is the Nigerian Society of Broadcasters, started since 1968. But because broadcasters don't talk about their issues, don't try to come together to fight for their cause, it died. Now, the current bond is trying to revive it, you know, spearheaded by some veterans. You know, they mobilize bond to do that. And that organization currently has over 1,000 broadcasters registered. But see, how many stations even talk about it? Many broadcasters don't even know that that society exists. Now, that society is supposed to be like your society for accounting guys, society for bankers and all those lawyers and so on, that regulates and fights the cause. Like now, we say doctors are going on strike because they have an association, ASU and co. They have an association to go on strike, and we can't go on strike anyway. Broadcasting is against, but at least we could, you know, make some presentations, take a delegation, go to the president of the country and say, look, this is what broadcasters are going through, and we need something to be done about it. Go to the National Assembly, make a case there, put publications every day, mandate the same way we mandated broadcast organizations to do peaceful messages that have been leading to peaceful elections over the years that people are not praising broadcasters for. The same way every day, scroll things on your screen about the need for things to be done for broadcasters. Okay. But what I want broadcasters to do is, BORN is Broadcasting Organizations of Nigeria. It is not for the professionals. It's for the owners. So that's why you see the owners there. But many of the owners don't even go for board meetings. The GMs, they sit there. You know, so that's what it's for. But BORN is pushing this, helping to push for this national broadcasting society of broadcasters, okay? It's for all broadcasters to come together, support that move, register, and be part of it. Okay. Yeah.
There is a role the community can play in ensuring the welfare of broadcast workers. But then it's a very, very tricky, zone, because you are meant to have editorial independence. So if I offer you accommodation now as a community leader, how independent are you really as a practitioner in the media space? So how do we balance that particular dilemma between the community delivering its responsibility to you and you sustaining your independence?
Laws can help. Take, for instance, there's the TV license fee, which was what was funding the FRCN and NTA in those days. In 1979, the law was changed in the process of putting the 1979 Constitution. And now it's local governments that collects that money, and nothing goes to the broadcast organizations. So if, for instance, it is mandated, like now, if you're posted to an organization, the organization is told to take care of the corpers' accommodation and transport, or give them money in return. So if there's that TV license fee, even if it is whoever is collecting it, but the law stipulates there that this money should be used to provide XYZ for broadcast organizations. It is the law, so it has to be done, and that cannot affect your independence.
Okay.
But if it's the one I'm just coming to dash you money and give you a hair, that's where problem is. But a good broadcaster, irrespective of what anybody does for you, you will still be independent. You make them know, yeah, look, oh, this is what
my job is my job.
And then they see this from the way you produce your programs, the way you do these things. There are stations that no person who wants to do mago will go to, because they know these ones are truly independent.
That's the ethics of the profession. Now let's go on a short break. We're still talking about the welfare of media practitioners, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Thank you for staying tuned to Early Exchange on Souq News. We're still talking about the welfare of media workers. But then, another part of the welfare package is the safety of media workers who are often exposed to a lot of hazards in the line of duty. We have tales of journalists who lost their lives in the line of duty, and those who didn't lose their lives actually maybe got injured one way or the other. But then, questions arise about how safe should the working environment be for media workers. Yesterday at the Stakeholders Forum, it was raised about what should organizations do to ensure that these hazards are minimized for their workers, and if eventualities happen, what should be done to ensure that the families are, adequately compensated for that. Maybe we should just have this soundbite. First and foremost, then we'll come back to Arulion as we ask more, pointed questions about the welfare, hazards, and safety of the work environment for media workers. So let's have that soundbite from yesterday's forum.
It will be regulated. I mean, there should be a law to the effect, that there should be insurance for all practitioners, so that when you face or experience any hazard, the insurance takes care of that. In the communique, it should be provided for. It should be said that every station should insure.
Okay, so insurance, we'll start with that. Arolina, the media consultant from Cleverest Communication, is still here. So what should we do to ensure that every media practitioner working for an organization is insured? Is this a task that most organizations are up to?
Because of that economic situation is difficult. But you see, if it is put as one of the criteria for giving this license, for allowing, licenses are given definitely, but before you go on air, before you're allowed to start commercial broadcast, the NBC comes and checks. If that is part of what is checked at that stage, I think it will help. I know a few media organizations that have some kind of minimal insurance for their staff. Even international organizations, a lot of the international reporters you see in Nigeria that report from Nigeria are not even insured. That's the truth. Because many organizations want to run away from liability. And if you give them that room, they would. Because if something happens, they can't meet up to that demand. You know what it's like, life insurance, you know what it's like. They can't, so they try to run away from it. But if you make it as part of the criteria that a station needs to meet before, then fine. But the other thing we could do is, like now as we are talking about it, there are several organizations that could come with simple packages. And it will just be some little deductions from your salary that can help. Even while working at the BBC, our arm was a totally different arm. And we had to come together to do several different kind of packages, talking to organizations that provide such kind of packages so that certain things will be taken care of beyond what the organization does. So many insurance organizations don't know even what to insure for media organizations. So if we talk about it a lot, they will get to know and they will see where, because it's not free. When they collect your money, they are investing it. So it's good business for them.
Thank you. It is now time to bring in the president of the Nigerian Guild of Editors, Mr. Eze Anaba. Good morning, Mr. Eze Anaba.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm fine. Also joining us today is the Nigerian Union of Journalists Chair. We're talking about Mr. Adeleye Ajayi. Good morning, Mr. Adeleye Ajayi. Mr. Adeleye Ajayi, are you with us? Okay, so let's engage Mr. Eze Anaba. We're talking about the hazards in this line of work, journalism, broadcasting. Could you please speak to some of the major hazards in this line of work?
Well, the biggest hazard in town now is economic hazard. If people are not well paid to do their job professionally, you have a poorly informed and a poorly equipped journalist will lead to a poorly informed society. So prioritizing the welfare of journalists is essential for maintaining a free and informed society. So besides the fiscal hazards and all that, the most important thing is economic welfare. And it's imperative that media house owners and all that should ensure that their journalists are very well paid so that they can be psychologically balanced, psychologically in good shape to do their job professionally.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay. You said that the biggest hazard is economic hazard, economic problems for the practitioners. Well, people will agree with you on that. But your union...
I'm looking at that contextually.
I understand that. I quite get that.
I said economic hazard.
Go on. You were saying something? Okay.
Yes,
all right.
I said why I said economic hazard. In our climate in Nigeria today, the biggest hazard to journalists' well-being is economy. Is the economy. If you contrast that to the Europeans, the Americans, they don't have the challenge we have. That's why you use that. That's why I said.
I agree with you. I agree with you. But how does your association advocate for the rights and welfare of its members, considering the fact that we have these economic and probably non-economic hazards facing them? How does NUJ advocate for the welfare of its members?
I'm not an executive of the NUJ, so I think an executive of NUJ is online. Yes. So he can speak to that.
I mean NG, I can only speak for the Guild of Editors.
Yeah, at the guild level, as editors, we ensure that we interface with the management because we are also members of the NUJ. So NUJ represents us at the local level, that's at the organizational level, and we interface with the NUJ so that we speak to management on the welfare of members. And don't also forget, there's condition of service. If we find that unacceptable, we take on the management. So right now, the journalists are buffeted by two major issues. That's why I started with the economy. The biggest hazard to the well-being of a journalist today is the economy. You're talking about the poor economic situation in the country, poor sales, cost of production has hit the roof, and media owners, and at the level of an editor, I know for a fact that the cost of production is so astronomical that the profit is marginal. So you are constantly, as a media owner, challenged by the need, the desperation to have your product on the newsstand, if you're a newspaper, and the production to have, if you're a broadcast journalist, to be on air. Everything is dollarized. And we know how difficult it is to access dollar in our economy today, as currently. We also know how difficult it is for people to bring out their hard-earned money to buy newspapers. So that's why I said the biggest hazard facing the Nigerian journalists today is economy.
Now,
so to answer your question, the editors and the NUJ work in tandem to engage the media owners on how to improve the welfare of their workers.
Thank you very much for that. You did mention engagement. Are these engagements yielding results? Have they been yielding any form of results over time? Because Aaron Leonard says something now that irrespective of what happens, media practitioners cannot go on strike because they are that essential, but they must be protected at all costs. So what has been the result of this engagement, and so that we can know what to do next?
Well, it's not absolutely correct. I would due respect to the guy that spoke earlier. Newspaper houses do go on strike. I know for a fact, in the Guardian, for instance, the union shut down Guardian for a couple of days, which led to the retrenchment of a couple of staff. The paper I work, I know that sometime, some years back, the union shut down the paper because of condition of service. I also know that a couple of newspapers have been threatened and have been threatened to be shut down by their union because of condition of service. So if I can't speak for broadcast journalists, I can speak for print journalists. They can go on strike.
So the engagement you've had over time, what has been the results?
There have been improvements. Quite frankly, there have been improvements. But again, at a level, you can't be irresponsible in your demands. Speaking as an editor, for instance, I know how difficult it is to put a newspaper on the newsstand. Cost of production, every equipment, every material you need to produce a newspaper is dollarized, is important in Nigeria today. We also know that it's difficult for the average Nigerian to bring out his money to buy a newspaper. Not because he doesn't want to buy, but it's because he can't afford it. The advertisers, where we make the bulk of our money from, do not pay on time. They also have their own challenges. Their clients are not paying. So a newspaper house is hit by a double or triple whammy. You are not selling. Okay? Cost of production is high. Advertisers are also shrinking. So in the face of that, you also have to motivate your journalists, put them in a situation where they will be able to perform optimally. So how do you deal with this conundrum? That is the challenge facing a newspaper owner now and the editors.
Okay. The developments in the ICT world are meant to enable print journalists in particular go around the cost of production because everything is online. How much of digital advocacy is going on among the Guild of Editors to ensure that members are able to develop sustainable business models once we have this skyrocketing, dollarization of the economy?
Listen, the truth is that every newspaper, any newspaper worth its name today must have a digital platform. The Vanguard, where I'm editor, has a digital platform. So the digital platform is separate from the physical paper. Yes, you talked about the development in ICT. It's helped. It has helped to produce the physical paper. Your access to information is better. You have quicker worldwide interaction that will improve your product. But this high-tech information is one of the ingredients. I mean, development in ICT is one of the ingredients in producing a newspaper. The physical paper itself, and when I mean the physical paper, I'm talking about newsprint, I'm talking about ink, I'm talking about plates. No, you still need that. ICT has helped to have better plates. It has helped to create better quality newsprint. It has helped to create better ink, more quality ink. All this still have to be bought with cash in dollars. So when you are hit with that, added to the fact that you are not doing well on a newsstand, not because people are not don't want to patronize you, they can't afford it.
Thank you very much.
So
the press.
You have this, the only place where the ICT information technology has really helped is online in a digital space. Our digital platform, for instance.
We'll continue this conversation. Thank you very much, Mr. Eze Anaba. We need to go on a short break now. We'll continue this when we get back. Welcome back to Early Exchange. We are talking about the welfare of media practitioners in Nigeria. And Aaron Leonard has spoken a lot about the broadcast arm, and we've also had the chairman or the president of the Nigerian Guilds of Editor, Mr. Eze Anaba, speak on the print arm of media practice in Nigeria. So he mentioned some key points there, talking about how over the years they've been able to talk to different stakeholders, you know, to see how the remuneration of the media practitioners in the print sector, you know, can be revised upwards to suit the economic situation. But one thing that the two of you agree on is the fact that one of the main challenge broadcasters and you know, the print practitioners face in Nigeria is the economic situation. And so let's talk about how to, the concerns of emerging journalists, you know, in the sector, the freelancers, the other non-traditional practitioners in this country. How do we balance things up at this point in time?
The truth about it is that with the coming of technology, social media and everything, for a long time we've been talking about citizen journalism. You see a lot of stations do this, your eye report, eyewitness, blah, blah, blah. It's all about citizen journalism. You find a lot of people, and that's where this quackery thing comes from, where we find a lot of people who claim to be journalists, and surprisingly, some are actually trained journalists. Who just decide not to do certain things properly. Let me put it like that. So when you talk about economy, which is one of the biggest issues affecting journalists, whether print or broadcast, everyone wants to survive. So not everybody will do what I was talking about, where you see it as something you love to do, you want to do, because whether you're being paid or not. Some see it as business, okay? So if someone will pay me to do some kind of journalism, I will do that. So there are things that can be done with a regular broadcaster in a broadcast organization. So you find people engaging freelancers to do these things, and they see it as revenue generating stuff. We have politicians engaging them, even governments engaging people to do some kind of propaganda and things like that. And it's mainly for economic purposes. That's the truth. It's business. Fake news that we talk about today is business. Some people just post fake news there to get clicks. When you get a certain number of clicks, YouTube pays you, Facebook pays you, and it's about business. But what we need to do, what the president of the Guild of Editors said, he said any media organization worth its name would have an online space. So these freelancers occupy those online spaces. So what do traditional broadcasters do? We sit in our traditional space? No, we occupy that space also. Now we have the muscle to push them out and force them to do the right thing by occupying the online space, which a lot of broadcast organizations have not been able to do.
Okay, looking ahead, what should broadcast practitioners, you know, do? What should they focus on that can promote growth in the industry itself? Project now for us.
First thing, it's, you see, broadcasters, you know, that's why it's difficult to talk about yourself, because you put the news you put, it's news about others, news about things happening in the country. One thing is to focus on solution journalism. That's the thing. Now, when you don't just break news for breaking sake, you break news so that it will help you live a better life. So when we leave this studio, we want to be able to go home and find electricity, find water, find all that. So when you do programs that is focused on solution journalism, which is about showing these politicians the way to go. When you interview, like now you're interviewing people, and then you do a report, and then we come out with the way to go. And then keep on, you know, repeating it till the politician does it. Now, when the economy is taken care of, welfare of journalists will definitely improve. Now, where the economy is good, because we've had cases where a station was not really doing bad, but the owner just decides not to pay, which is where those associations come in and you can hold that owner to account. Now, in such kind of a situation, you have all the muscle and everything to hold such owners to account. So it's about you doing programs that improve lives, you know, improve health. You do medical related programs, educational programs, do programs that talk about latest technology in the ICT and things like that. As you are talking about innovations in the ICT, you would also see where you could do certain things that could improve even yourself as a journalist.
We are going on a break now, especially to hear from Justin Okere to have some business tips. So when we get back, we'll focus on media and technology. It has been mentioned that technology is a major thing that has come in to make business easier for us. Stay tuned for that.
We shouldn't leave the child to only one parent to bring up, whether it's the mother or the father. The child needs both parents. I want to talk about fathers because I made a post given that Father's Day just passed. In the post, I said that fathers are the unsung heroes in our lives. And a lady who saw the post asked me why I was admitting that fathers are unsung heroes. Why wouldn't they come forward to be recognized and to be celebrated as heroes in our lives? So I asked her what exactly she meant by that. And her response jolted me. And she said, fathers just content with paying fees, providing upkeep money, but very absent in the lives of their children. So I asked her, what could we do to be more present? And she gave very few suggestions. For instance, taking your child to school once a week. And in that ride, there's so much you share with your child that helps you to bond and to understand that child better. Prioritizing your child on their important milestones, because those milestones don't come twice. Being there when they need you, for instance, advice about their first job. We shouldn't leave the child to only one parent to bring up, whether it's the mother or the father. The child needs both parents. It needs different things from each of the parents. So fathers, please let us not be the unsung heroes in our children's lives. Let us come forward and also be celebrated as heroes in our children's lives.
Okay, thank you for staying tuned to the program. It's still early exchange. Okay, we still have the NG president via Zoom, and we lost track of that something in call. Okay, good morning. You're back with us. Good to have you back. Okay, I have it that is not there again. Okay, it's fine. So we're talking about media and technology. Earlier, you mentioned the fact that traditional media practitioners seem to have left the digital space for oncomers and newcomers, as the case may be. But then, let's look at this. How should they, respond to these adapting digital technology? What should they do essentially? It is not just enough to say we are determined to go there and claim our space. Beyond determination, what steps should media houses take to ensure that, yes, they play in that space profitably well?
I like that. Let's reclaim our space. It doesn't happen like that. It goes back to this same thing we talk about training. Technology will look strange. It will be like witchcraft until when you go down and take it step by step and begin to train your staff. So if you don't have that culture of training, adopting new technology, we have broadcasters who claim to be very good broadcasters but have not moved with time. My friend Oscar Oyinson at the Stakeholders Forum yesterday talked about the need for involving the younger generation. So I see broadcasters who just say, oh, these ones, they don't know what they are doing. If anybody is online and posting every day, that guy knows something that you don't know. Huh? So, one, whatever platforms are there on social media, each broadcaster open a page. As you're doing your stuff online, be sharing there. That's how to occupy the space. So media organizations need to have your Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok now, even your LinkedIn page, So occupy that space. And the same way you schedule your programs to be on air every day, the same way you schedule your posts online. And you see, it could even, it's for instance, you want to do a program tomorrow, you want to do a program a week after now. See, no matter how you research, there might be areas you would miss. Personal experiences are not found in the book or anywhere. Now, when you put this promo online, you see a lot of people and ask for inputs from your listeners and viewers. And you see a lot of people share a lot of information which would help to build your content. And your content becomes more factual. Now, with those information they share, you could go further and do further research. You could send your crew there to talk to people. It enriches your content. And that is when your content is enriched, what happens? More people view you. Now, you're going to get the people who view you physically like this. You have the people who also follow you online. So you add all that together, and that's money for you. So key thing, just go. Open all those pages, then call professionals, IT experts to train you on how to maximize your Facebook page, there's what they call social media optimization, all those kind of things. There's also the way to generate revenue is not straightforward. They'll train people on all that. There's what they call, I've forgotten this thing now. They are editorial ethics for online journalism. You have to train on that. There are things you do there.
Yes, I'm a little bit more concerned about news gathering and news presentation online now. One of the major issues that have been noted by many is sensationalism. How some of these bloggers put their stories, also fake news. A good number of people just speak things and they go drop. Now that we have more traditional media houses going online, it looks like some of them are joining the bandwagon instead of sanitizing the space. How do you think things should be done in this space?
Honestly, it's quite disappointing that a lot of newsrooms, and I'm speaking to broadcasters, a lot of newsrooms today just lift things from social media. You see them scrolling, even on major TV and radio stations. You see it scrolling, and you know that this person just pick this thing from whether one international space or one blog and all that and scroll like that. You'll see people use terms that this one just picked from somewhere. You can imagine a sports presenter talking about summer transfer in Nigeria. We have summer in Nigeria. You just lifted it from somewhere. And that's what happens, and nobody checks. Somebody can use a fictitious, they can say this is from maybe like there was a time there was a post alleged to be done by a former president, and it was fake. Someone can just post something and put there. Some people can even open fake pages for people and put. So you have to do your research, and that's why there's training on how to detect fake news. It's a skill. It's not what you could just see. You have to learn how to do it, and so Newsrooms need to make sure that your news is original. You train people on how to, yes, you can go online and get some. There's no crime there. But make sure you put it through the fact-checking assessment to see whether it's truth or it's fake news before you carry it. People want to break news. What's there to break news? What news do you want to break? No matter how hard we try, in the world today, people will get the news first on social media before it gets to you on the station. So don't kill yourself. But if you break something that is wrong, people will just look at your station, oh, those ones, fake news station. There are some stations called fake news stations today in Nigeria. You don't want to be called that.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I like the fact that you spoke about the speed, the unnecessary speed to break news. Nobody breaks news these days. I mean, no traditional media station, except you have an exclusive, access to a particular information. But then, how do we balance the need for speed to break the news, like we said, and the need to deepen conversation? Shouldn't we be looking at deepening conversation? Because no matter how fast you try, someone has broken the news.
Exactly. That's why I talk about solution journalism. But even before then, one thing stations need to do, because you need that information from the social media where it has been broken, let me put it like that, to build that conversation you're talking about. So what organizations need to do is to establish fact-checking desks in each station. So as we are on air now talking, I'm talking here, I could say so many things that are wrong. You'll just say, oh, because I'm an expert. There should be someone somewhere fact-checking everything I am saying. And then they'll pass the information to you that you correct me even on air here. And that will save you from NBC fight.
Well, the other arm to that is sensationalism. Do you need to color things and paint them gray before you can be successful in the social media space? Because for some people it has become so toxic. It's more about trying to witch hunt people. How can we work on that?
See, sensationalism to me is not really wrong. It depends on what you are sensationalizing. That's where the problem is. Okay? It's just like we're talking about welfare. No, you guys will look good. Nobody will know if you've had breakfast or not. You understand? Because if you look terrible, I'm not going to watch. Okay? Now, if this news is not sensational a little bit, I probably would not click. But it depends on how you're doing it. Okay? For instance, let's take patriotism, for instance. Now, we are supposed to be patriotic. Some people are taking it to another level and making it seem like you're not supposed to say what should be said. But now, if you know that if I say this thing in this way, the entire Lagos is on fire, you know the kind of, do you know what will happen? You get it. Now, the fire you probably, what you're saying is not that Lagos is physically on fire, but it's just that the heat is too much in your house. You get? But how would people pick that? You understand? So you need to check and say, okay, would people read this thing differently? If they read it like this, what kind of problems would it cause? But, you have to be creative. You need to put things in a way, like I was producing program Flavor, it was on drug abuse. A lot of people will do a youth program and say, today we are talking about the effect of drug abuse on youth. Is that the way young people talk? It's not sweet now. You understand? Well, I did mine and I said, today we are talking about jungle school. You want to know what school is jungle school? Look up. You understand? You understand? So you think that we are going into the jungle. It's sensationalism, right? But what we're talking about? We're talking about drug abuse. You understand?
Something
so you could do it in a harmless way, not the ones you just put some kind of things that could cause problem.
Okay, let's look at the place of emerging technologies, the artificial intelligence, the augmented realities, we have the virtual reality and so on and so forth, because it's not just about pushing out content there, it's about making it exciting to watch. You mentioned the use of language here, jungle school as against drug abuse. Well, no young person wants to learn about drug abuse. I mean, it's like a cliche to them now. To what extent should media organizations, leverage on emerging technologies to create more impact and visibility for their contents?
The former NBC DG, Emeka Umba, during his tenure, this digitization thing we're talking about moved to, a certain level. Now, he presented a paper a couple of years ago and said, in 5 years' time, this was, I think, what year was that, 2017 or 18 or thereabout, in 5 years' time, any station that does not embrace technology, digital technology, will be out of business. Currently now, go check it. Major major organizations that pay for adverts have taken half of that or even 60% online. You have skit makers making more money than broadcast organizations today. Now, the stress of putting a program together, some of you had sleepless night last night to prepare for this. If you embrace AI, it helps you to do a lot of things faster. Instead of you typing out your rundown, it could help you get that. So when we talk about all the issues affecting broadcasters, the economic issues, the cost of a lot of hardware, embracing technology brings all these things down. Currently, I help set up radio and TV stations using latest technology. We have what is called virtual reality and now augmented reality. Those of you who watch the Tokyo Olympics, you will see where it's as if during the slow motion, it's as if they are taking the cameras around the athlete. You will think they have so many cameras around there. You think they have something that is moving around. No, it's technology. They are tracking devices, things you could use where you have just 2 cameras in your studio and you use simulation the same way they do your science fiction movies, your games. The technology has now come into broadcasting. And embracing this technology would reduce the cost of setting up a station, would take like 80% off the cost you spend on hardware.
For media houses that are already established and are battling, they're trying to struggle with the economic situation of the country. When you talk about technology, it's huge investment, virtual reality, artificial, how can they balance? Are there little ones that they can still afford, or how can they balance things up here?
Yes, technology changes every day. What you do today, by tomorrow you will see something else. We are struggling to go on 4K, and some places are already using 8K already, since they've been using 8K for a long time. So technology keeps improving. So you don't just, for instance, you already have the hardware that is working for you. Why do you want to dispose them? So you only use technology for little things. Like for instance now, what's been scrolled there, you could use technology to improve that. You understand? Like I said, preparing for your program, you could use AI, to prepare for your programs and things like that. So there are so many little things you could do that can improve your broadcast, without really breaking the bank to do something. And technology has grades. There are cheap things you could get that could do little things, just slight improvement on your screen, and you'll attract more viewers. Then there are the ones that are way up there. So it all depends, and you start gradually, you move step by step till you get there. It's not that you just, wake up and where's the money coming from? We'll send the FCC to you.
Okay, I am interested in the numbers because before she asked that question, you were talking about that adopting technology in broadcast can slash your cost outlay by 80%. How is that? Because a digital mixer is expensive as compared to an analog mixer. So how does, adopting tech in media slash your operating cost by 80%?
Everybody that has a smartphone like this, no matter how fake that smartphone is, owns a broadcast station. And that's the truth. Compression rates have reduced. That's why you have many of all these bloggers. There are so many online TV stations that don't have any physical space, and they are making a lot of money. Now, you could use your phone with technology and send your signal directly to the satellite and be on air. Okay? Yes, it might not be as good as, bright as some other stations that have the full complement. But see, in the days of VHS and all that, we're still enjoying TV. Okay? So now what technology has done is that with a little, you can still be on air. It doesn't mean it's the best. It doesn't mean you should not strive to get that high quality because you want to be where everybody is. But what we are saying is that you can go on air with as little as 20% of your actual budget. And then you begin to improve over time as the revenue comes in.
Now, what's the place of collaboration here? You know, how can media houses collaborate, maybe with tech companies, to get what they need?
That is the key. Even at the NBC Stakeholders Forum in Abuja, I shared that as one of the key. As head of media development at BBC Media Action, we try to get media organizations to collaborate, not even just with tech companies. Media organizations can collaborate with amongst themselves. For instance, I'll give you an instance. One area of this technology that can help a lot of organizations is the area of research. It costs a lot to do research. Now, media organizations can collaborate together and work with a research organization to do research for all of them. At the BBC Media Action, then, when we do research, we share to all the stations, and they are really excited about it, and it helps their production a lot. Now, you have the airspace. No organization can try, you know, without coming out on air to show themselves. Okay, so you walk up to organizations. Even someone at the Stakeholders Forum mentioned it yesterday when the NBC is complaining about funds. They could partner with organizations and do things for the media organizations. Now, you give them free air time. It's as simple as that. Now, if you don't use this airtime today, it's lost, it's gone. You're not going to get it back. So you give them, say, look, I have this airtime, we'll promote your product. What we need for you to do is set up AI system for us in the office, set up this for us in the office, and you keep promoting them. Now, as you promote them, what happens is that they get more business. That is why organizations spend billions on adverts. Okay? And now, because you are now engaging technology, all those organizations that take 60% of your budget and put it online will start coming back to you, because when they come to you, they are getting double. They are going to get the terrestrial, satellite, and online platforms all at once. So they shouldn't go to people who are just online. They should rather come to you because you are giving them the full complement.
Okay, and still about taking your content online. At the forum yesterday, I overheard some, top executives of media organizations talking about the threat posed to their revenue by the online unregulated media practitioners, and they really don't know how to, it would appear they didn't know how to go about, leveraging on online resources to monetize their content. For them, it looks like a very big thing to do. Meanwhile, these young boys and girls are doing it, and they are strolling online, and they are making money literally. How should core media practitioners, leverage on online possibilities to monetize content? Can we really make that transition just like that from offline to online, and we still generate that traction and money?
What they should do, they should contact me. I'll train them and show them how to do it.
You'll pay for that.
See, just like I said, you need training. The first step, go there, open all those pages, and upload things there. Now, a lot of media organizations have pages that they are not using. Get these young people. See, for years, a media organization in Nigeria has the highest views online. Go check the statistics. Nigeria has one of the fastest growing internet markets in the world. Who does it? See, let's go to the NSAS. I was interviewed by a foreign media organization in Cameroon, and they were talking about the NSAS. Now, while other people were talking about so many NSAS, I was talking about the importance of technology. How that protest, even though the end the way it was expected, but how technology was used in order to do that. And it was a record breaker worldwide. That's just to tell you the power and skills Nigerians have, young Nigerians have. So Organizations need to have internship roles for these young people. Let them come in, just put them there. You'll be surprised at what they will do. They will post everything. As this program is going on, they are tweeting it, they are posting about it, and you just see the numbers, you know, start increasing. So all media owners, general managers, those who complained yesterday at the forum that someone is taking over your job, nobody is taking over your job. It's you that is not doing what you should be doing. Go in there. Get the right people to train your people. Bring in the young ones who, without you, you don't need to tell them anything. They will post. Make your shows exciting so it's attractive to the young ones to post.
I must agree with you on training, because sometimes when you see someone make something look so easy, a lot more has gone into it than you really saw. And you know, sometimes people just feel like social media work, it's just easy, but it's a full-time job for many.
Yeah.
A lot of efforts, a lot of development, personal development, business development has gone into it, and it's not something that media organizations should take with kids' glove. But let's talk about these newbies online that we're talking about. There's been questions about regulation. Should they be brought into the brought in by the regulatory bodies managing the traditional media houses? Is there a need for sanitization and checks that must be done by regulatory bodies?
There's been a lot of talk about social media regulations and all that. I don't think it's necessary. Occupy the space. See, what government is not doing, see, when you don't talk to the people regularly, the people will talk whatever they feel, whatever assumptions will be what will be out there. So governments need to occupy that space. That's the truth. Now, not too long ago, we had academy. We had funding from the U.S. government. See, why would foreigners be coming to fund things around fake news here? What is government doing? What are state governments doing? We had the commissioners of information there at the event yesterday. Go back. We got funding to train young people, normal young people, not broadcasters, in all the states of the South. That's West Africa Broadcast and Media Academy. And we did that training. We trained people in some places. There were well over 100 young people. And we trained them on those ethics of what to post, how to post quality things. Some of these people who post all these things that are like threat is because they don't know the effect. When you have a child, there are so many things your child will do, not because the child wants to cause problems or harm himself or herself, but just because they don't know that that's the thing. So invest in training the regular young people. I do my behind-the-scenes events. A lot of time, I invite a lot of young people. I've been doing this thing since 1999. I go to NYSC camps, I train young people, and when you train them like this is me doing this. Imagine if several other people and other organizations are doing this. Those young people who post all those things will stop. They'll start posting quality things. Then government organizations speak to people, use those platforms very well. So before any fake news goes out, they've already heard the truth from you, if you are telling us the truth anyway.
Okay. All right. Now, still talking about the nature of what we post online, there seems to be a particular trend, negative news trends, essentially. Yeah. One of the reasons for the popularity of the EndSARS is that it is anti-government, quote and unquote, really. Whatever you do that is anti-government enjoys, massive support. But then, we as media workers owe the public a responsibility to even push the positive agenda of the government. But now, how do we now make it attractive to an audience that has fed so much and is overfed by negative biases? How do we make positive content as attractive or even more attractive to them?
I can tell you that positive content is more attractive. If not, our musicians and Nollywood actors won't be having the kind of fame they have worldwide. US now, the United States, there are posts on YouTube, how various stations now, you see them doing interviews about the rise of Afrobeats in the US. From where? It's what's going on online. It's trending. It's these same young people. I do not believe, they always say negative news to sell your newspaper or let people just come and tune to your news. What really trends? Go and check young people, what they check online are positive things. That is the truth. How many people, we talked about mental health and all that, how many people really want to be watching horror movies? They'll run out. You get the movies that sell the most, you know, movies that have some kind of positive stuff. You know, I like my former Jackie Chan, for instance, not the American one now. The former Jackie Chan, nobody dies.
Nobody dies. Nobody bleeds. Nobody bleeds.
But they fight and fight and fight. And one of the biggest movies. See what's happening with Nollywood. Now, the biggest YouTuber in Africa is a Nigerian. He's a comedian, Mark Angel. So positive sells. So let's change this narrative, make positives creative and sell, and make it sell.
Yes, lastly on the show today, as we continue to leverage on social media platforms, there has been some regulatory actions taken against some of these platforms in Nigeria, in other parts of the world. So let's bring it back to Nigeria. How do you think we are doing on that front to ensure that we sanitize the space?
First of all, those trying to regulate the social media do not even understand the space. Okay? So they just talk about regulation, they talk about fake news, hate speech.
Child rights, privacy, copyright.
Yes, all that. Now, the EU even invited Mark Zuckerberg once, and if you go check all those Facebook and all those platforms, they put some certain things in place. In my organization, I remember then at the BBC, I was prevented from opening a Facebook page for a particular program because we've not been trained on the GDPR, the data protection laws. How many do we do here? We have those data protection laws in Nigeria. How many people know about them? Now, what the government should be looking at is not regulating. Now, if, for instance, the government is able to empower that sector so that what we see are the benefits of that sector. Do you know the Nigerians that are now millionaires when they say there is no job just because they've been able to engage online? So if you regulate that, for instance, when Twitter was banned, did you hear the amount of money we lost in this country? And we say the economy is bad. So rather, we need to look at how ICT, this technology, these platforms can bring in a lot of money to the country. And let's use it for our good. It's because we don't know how to use it. That's why we think it's all bad and just think about regulation. I want to hear the government come up with policies to improve the sector. Set up hubs, do things that will help young people. For instance, without government employing people, social media can employ a lot of people and has been doing that. That's where we should focus on.
Okay, thank you very much, Aro Leonard. That has been a very educative, submission here on the show today. One takeout from yesterday's forum at the meeting, the stakeholders forum, is that even regulators need regulation. And even media owners need training. But when we talk about media training, it's often assumed to be for those of us who work on the space. Even media owners were said to need training. So as NBC sets up school, the school should not be for media workers. It should be for media owners and even for NBC members themselves.
Should start with the owners first.
Definitely. All right, that's the show today. It's the Saturday package. Thank you very much for joining us and for staying through from 7 a.m. to almost 10 a.m. now from here in the studios. Thank you very much. My name is Ayo Jimmy. Tomorrow is yet another day, and I will be here by God's grace. Ola?
Yes, I look forward to see more media houses do better online, and I also look forward to us fixing this revenue generation issue. It is very important for the welfare of media practitioners in Nigeria. Thank you very much, Leonard. Once again, I am Olaoluwa Awe, and that's how I close the show. Have a nice day.